because it is all about the same thing, about connection and trust and timing together so that you always feel each other. You keep this tension so that it's easy to feel each other, and you have a breath together which builds your timing, and then everything is just easeful.
Hey, g'day folks. I want to welcome you all to another episode of the Acro Jam Podcast. My partner Sarah and I want to say a huge thank you for joining us to listen to something like this. The fact that anyone wants to check this out and listen to it makes us feel so grateful. As you might have saw in the episode description, this episode of the podcast is a bonus re-release of a previous episode of the Acro Jam Podcast. We are re-releasing all our previous episodes as we weren't really happy with the audio quality, and we want to share and promote the best version of the Acro Jam podcast that we can. So yeah, Sarah and I recently upgraded our podcasting recording devices and our editing software, so things are sounding heaps better, and I hope you enjoy this re-release and all the new episodes that are to come. So before we get into this episode, I just want to tell you that Sarah and I do this podcast purely to promote partner acrobatics in all its forms around the world. We get to share the thoughts and experience of all these awesome teachers who sit down with us, and we can share these with those of you who we know will benefit from them. But yeah, we're just two people, so we would be super grateful if you ever felt compelled to help us out and promote the podcast in any way. I don't know, you could like and subscribe on iTunes, you could leave us a 5-star review, you could share it with your local acro community, or you could just tell a friend who you think might be interested in it and has some long boring drive or stayed at an airport or a flight or something and might want to listen to something acro related. Anyway, if you don't want to do any of that, that's cool too. The fact that you're choosing to listen to this is just so cool to me, and I hope you enjoy. So for this episode of the podcast, the Acro Jam is going international again. We have our first ever guest from Finland. We have the amazing Katarina Sofia. You might know her on social media as Acrobatics, or as one part of the What May Be Life duo with her fantastic partner Jared.
Kat is a school teacher turned acrobat, and she now trains at a Spanish circus school with her partner Jared. We were lucky enough to experience her teaching style at the Byron Bay Flyaway in 2018, which is where we recorded this podcast.
So yeah, the podcast is a little bit out of date. I feel like things will mostly be relevant, but the thing that's most important we'd like to mention is that Kat has a festival coming up. It is in Lapland, in north of Finland.
So if you're looking out for the festival, it's called Midnight Sun Acro.
So if you're a little bit unfamiliar with Lapland during the summertime, as ignorant Australians we certainly were, they have 24 hours of daylight, and as a result, this gives you fantastic opportunities to train acro with up to 23 hours of training. There's festivals for both passionate acro yogis and acrobats, catering to an intermediate or advanced level. It's on beautiful private family land. They have a sauna, access to beaches, and indoor training facilities.
So if you're wanting to check out more information about that festival, which Kat's organising, just go to www.midnightsunacro.com. So without further ado, we hope you enjoy this conversation with Katarina Sofia.
Can you give us a little bit about your background and what led you to be here with us in Byron Bay?
Ooh, that's like two big questions at the same time. So what led me, I'm just going to answer the second one first. What led me here to Byron Bay is that I know Scott quite well from Threads Tasmania. And I really got into acro yoga while being in Australia about 3 years ago. So I was already a little bit into the acro yoga world and had done an acro yoga teacher's masterclass and so on. But then did this Tasmanian flyaway with Scott in Tasmania 3 years ago. And
You've actually been a participant in the flyaway.
yes. So I was a participant in Tasmanian flyaway almost 3 years ago and got to know Scott there. And that was also the beginning of my very serious acro yoga life, because before that it was just a hobby. But from then I had that 10-day intensive and actually never stopped since that moment.
So what first led you to start practicing acro yoga? Even before it became so serious, what drew you into the practice?
I think the first time I did it was in Spain with the guy who now does like strength and fitness exercises for acro yogis, like strength training for acro yogis, called Tudor Sirbu. So I met this guy through couch surfing, because I was couch surfing in Barcelona. And then we went to a park and there was an Acro Yoga Jam, and like he's this guy who does flags on anything and like insanely strong.
Yeah.
So he would just like, come here, and just twist and pop and spin me around into impossible things. And I was like, oh, this is really fun. So I got like a really false introduction to Acro Yoga.
Maybe we should mention to those who haven't seen a picture of Kat that she's incredibly small.
Yeah, that's yeah, maybe it made life easier for Tudor and that first moment when I didn't know what I'm doing, that I was small, that he could actually flip me around like that. But yeah, being small is great in partner acrobatics world, especially when you really have a base and a flyer. But being small can also be a disadvantage when you really do want to base things as well, and then it's so hard to make people trust that I'm okay.
So yeah, that can be a big challenge for a lot of flyers. So what are some of the techniques that you use to help flyers get on board with you basing? Because we've seen you in action, but how can you convey that trust to someone else?
Yeah, I actually do verbally repeat a lot of, I've got you. I have you.
Yeah.
You're okay. Stay there. Keep calm. Breathe. All these kind of cues of just like reassuring that everything is okay, everything is under control, and we can just relax in this. And that really helps. I never really go to the road of like, I've done this 1,000,000 times.
Which a lot of bases do. But yeah, I think your method of tact is a lot better. Yeah, that's a good lesson a lot of people can take on board.
Did you start basing from the start of your acro journey, or is that something that's more recent?
I actually did start basing since the beginning, and yeah, well, like for some of the listeners, it would maybe be a weird question because, like for example, in Finland, where I'm from, almost everyone is a hybrid. So all the girls base and fly. So that's a cultural thing also there, that everyone wants to do everything. Which is surprising for a lot of international teachers who go there. But yeah, like there should be like a photo of me or something for the listeners. But yeah, I'm like, I don't know if you work in feet, but I'm like 160 centimeters tall and weigh like 50 kilos. So I'm not the number one base to jump onto, maybe. But yeah, I did start basing since the beginning, also because I'm from a small city from north of Finland, and I had to create a community there. So I had to learn to base and fly everything I wanted to teach.
That's something I've also noticed when starting out in acro. It's easier to get somebody to be a flyer the very first time they're trying acro rather than
saying, hey, I'm going to fly this and you base this, and you try and teach them through that role. So we've been in a similar situation as well, coming from a smaller town where we need to create the community and help develop a following. So what did you find useful at that stage? What did you employ to start getting people practicing with you?
Well, for one, I had a very nice like comrade, like a friend helping me in that, because when I first did some acro yoga in north of Finland, there was like a very small super small community. Then I left from there, and like there was this guy who kept on having jams in there. And then when I went back, I would collaborate as much as possible with the other person who had an interest to have a community there.
Yeah.
So even though this guy has never done a teacher training, I've always like tried to keep him very much engaged and along the journey, because I know it's like the more people we have who want to put the effort to grow a community, the easier it is. If it's only on one person's shoulder, there's quite a big job. But I definitely feel also that you have to just put up a jam and put up weekly classes. Because if you just put up a jam, you won't get a good spotting culture, but you will get interested people. If you just put up a weekly class, you might get people who want to try it out but are not really passionate, so you kind of have to do both.
Yeah.
You mentioned you have done some teacher trainings, so can you tell us about those?
Yeah, after the Tasmanian flyaway 3 years ago, and after never stopping training 3 to 7 hours a day of acro yoga, I kept on doing that in Melbourne first for about maybe 2 months after the Tassie flyaway, and there's a great community in Melbourne. Big thanks to all those guys. Then I decided that I should do a teacher training before I go back to Finland. I had a cousin's wedding in Finland that I wanted to go back to. So I knew I'll go there, and I wanted to share all my skills. And then I thought, okay, if I want to share my skills, getting into the scene and also getting work and space to work in will be easier if I do a teacher training. So I did one in Bali called the Hanuman Acrobatic Yoga.
Oh, now that's really interesting to us, because we were just in Mysore, and I think we saw that posted around in different areas. Is the guy running that also an Ashtangi? Was it a mix of Ashtanga yoga and acro yoga?
Yeah, it's held by David Curry, but also by Indravati. And Indra is the main yoga and Thai massage teacher there. She's amazing, holds a lot of yoga teacher trainings otherwise as well. And she's from Bali, or from Indonesia. And then David is like just this amazing old school acro yogi tandem surfer, has just like a super calm energy and broad knowledge on it. So they do it together and have some other teachers along with them. Usually there's Melanie Lady Bass as well.
Yeah, that's someone we worked with in Vancouver. Yeah, very popular lady bass.
Yes. Feet like pillows.
And so then what was the next step? Where from there? You moved back to Finland with your new knowledge?
Yes, I moved back to Finland for a little while. I went back there, and literally like on my travel back to Finland, I just searched out what's going on in acro yoga scene in there, and I contacted this guy who was organizing an Acro Yoga Week Helsinki, this week-long event there, that, hi, so I've done this, I'm Kat, and I've done this teacher training, and I'm coming back to Finland, and can I volunteer or do anything, or can I be part of it? And he took me along. Yeah.
And so I think we talked about who that was, but who's the other guy in Finland? Who's the guy running the Acro Week?
Okay, so there's actually two guys, because the guy running the Acro Week is Valtteri.
Yeah, okay.
Who you know?
Yeah.
Because he actually lives in Vancouver.
Yeah, yeah.
So yeah, Valtteri runs the Acro Yoga Week Helsinki, and these days we actually run it pretty equally together.
Cool.
The first year I was just like a newbie in teaching world, assistant volunteer. And every year I've been taking more and more role in it, and I think Valtteri is the greatest person I've ever organized anything with. So yeah, and then in north of Finland, where I like grew up, that little community there, there's another guy, Jukka, who's like 30 plus years old, just loves doing acro, would just like spend hours with anyone who's new into it, and like just wants to put all his free time in keeping the community alive there.
Yeah, right on.
Dear friend of mine.
So what is this scene like in Finland? Like when I think of Finland, I certainly don't think of acro yoga. And you mentioned that everyone is a hybrid. So both men and women both want to train as basin flyers?
Yeah.
Why do you think that exists?
It's an interesting question of why. Because you more just like bump into the whoa and not the why of it. Like when there's international teachers visiting, they always like praise that quality of the students, that everyone's so eager to do both roles. But why is a good question.
Does it have to do with gender stereotypes? Not.
Maybe like a lot of Finnish women, like it's a country with strong, long history of like equal roles of women and men and like women's education and all these things, and women are quite like strong like mentally there, so it might have something to do with that. Like the Finnish women would not just be objects ever.
Not just flying objects.
Yeah. But they're also quite strong, you know. It's just like Finnish women, I think it's because Finnish women like to be strong. You know, they're not happy with just being flexible or light. They want to be strong.
Okay. Right on. So how is the scene now in 2018? Now that you guys have been holding the annual week-long and people like your friend are holding these community-minded initiatives to get people involved, what's the scene look like now?
In Finland, the scene is starting to look really good. In this year's Acro Yoga Week Helsinki, we had about 60, 70 people. So that's pretty good for a small country in the north like that. In my hometown in Oulu, we did a little one-day event and we had almost 20 people coming to that, which is really nice. And there's still weekly classes that my friend there is holding in the north, and I try to do at least one international workshop a year going back there. And there's also Parkour Circus Academy in middle of Finland, like between the capital, the week, Acro Yoga Week, and my hometown. There's a city which has a strong circus culture and partner acrobatics culture, and they're getting more and more into acro yoga, and like this borders are melting in Finland, which I really like. That it's not anymore like acro yoga. It's like a curse word for circus people, and then for acro yogis, it's like all those scary high things that the borders are melting there. So that's really nice.
You've actually touched on one of my favourite questions, which is where do you see the lines between acro yoga and partner acrobatics, or are there no lines?
There's definitely if I was to think first from where would there be a difference or a line, is like sometimes partner acrobatics is thought as things that happen higher, like too high heights, and things that are often either static figures or dynamic throws. So this like classic idea would be like static or very dynamic in partner acrobatics, and in acro yoga is more about flow. So that could be like why you put them like in different boxes, but we try to really work on like integrating everything. We like to teach flows that go always from acro yoga, L-basing, to standing, to dancey acro moves in between, and just like take out those borders, because it is all about the same thing, about connection and trust and timing together, so that you always feel each other. You keep this tension so that it's easy to feel each other, and you have a breath together which builds your timing, and then everything is just easeful. So I think it's an advantage that we come from acro yoga into partner acrobatics world, because our partner acro feels good and it never yanks into place.
Yeah. Do you think that that's different then for people coming from it just from partner acrobatics?
It can be. We definitely do see some partnerships in like circus schools and circus performance that work with more force, strength, that work with more abrupt, like, for example, there's a few moves in partner acrobatics like bucket up or in locate that whether it's reverse or normal, you can go with such an ease and timing together and just float up there, or you can towel it. They both work. I've seen both and all the variations of both. If people come strictly from circus background, they're more prone to go towards toweling. If people come from acro yoga world or a combination of some other kind of partner movement like contact improvisation or acro yoga, they would be more prone to go towards this connected, more floaty kind of style. I don't know if that answers your question, but
no, it answered it very well. So you mentioned Circus School there.
Yeah.
You're currently attending Circus
Yes.
School. Can you tell us about that?
So I'm studying in Spain, in Madrid, in a circus school called Carampa. It's Escuela de Circo Carampa.
So what's the translation of Karampa? What does that mean?
It's comes from I'm not sure why it's Carampa, but I know it has this AM in the name, and that's from Asociación de Malabaristas, so it's actually a jugglers association originally. So we have quite a few jugglers in our school. It's been there for about 20-30 years, so it's quite an old school already, but unfortunately very unknown.
So what led you to start your training there?
I tried to get into a circus school in Finland. After, long story short, a path of first trying to find a dance school in Australia, because I wanted to be a dancer, I just wanted to move, and then figuring out I'm too old and I have not done ballet since I was 4. So couldn't do that. Got really into acro yoga, then figured out in circus school you can actually train dance, you can train theater, and you can train your acro. So then I really wanted to go to a circus school. I also saw a very inspiring circus performance. Just got really into it. I also have studied music education before, so I play multiple instruments, and I wanted to combine live music into my acro and all that. So I kind of like got really inspired with this contemporary circus and performing that. So I tried to get into a circus school in Finland, and they turned me down because I'm too old. So then I was without a plan. Those auditions are in spring, and the only other auditions that are after that in Europe were the auditions in Spain. So I applied to 2 circus schools in Spain and got into both and decided on Madrid.
Yeah, right on. Yeah. So what does the daily life look like of a circus student?
It's very physical and tough. We start school around 8:30 or 9, and we train until 5 at least. And so that's a basic day, and then do maybe 1 or 2 times a week. We'd have also evening classes, and usually you stay and train a little bit more. And then if you have a performance coming up, you would create that during the weekend. So it's pretty full on.
Are you forced to train every modality of circus?
We were. Next year I won't, but we were. Which is good if you end up teaching kids circus, which most probably while trying to make your living you will. So it's good, like, to know a little bit of everything.
What was your least favourite
juggling, not because I don't like it, just because I suck at it.
Oh, and did you start this school by yourself or with a partner?
I was supposed to do it by myself. When I applied to Finland, I applied alone, and I was supposed to do aerial acrobatics. Because I've done, I don't know, maybe since 4 or 5 years ago, I did rope as a hobby, and I wanted to do more of that as well. So.
Sorry, what is that? When you say rope?
Yeah, there's different kinds of rope mediums actually in circus, but it's corde de lis, so it's vertical rope, so it's like aerial silks, which are more commonly seen, but it's just one rope, so it's not so stretchy, and there's just one, and you often do more dynamic things with it. If you're a climber from background, then it's much closer to that.
Okay.
But yeah, I applied alone. Actually applied even to the school in Spain alone. But then in last year's June, I went to an Acro Ventures trip in Slovenia and met this guy Jared, who was organizing it, and we had a great connection. We have a very similar tempo, and we both work our partner Acro with breath very profoundly, and we like to communicate in a similar way in our training. So it worked, and he tagged along. Yeah. Now we're there together.
So was it an acro yoga connection or a love connection first?
Professional first. So we decided to work together for the next 2 years, and we met for 10 days, and we trained during those 10 days. We trained maybe 2 or 3 times because I was there with another friend, because you had to come with a training partner, and he was an organizer. So yeah, but those few times that we did train together, it worked so well that we linked, and he said, "Oh, your plans for a circus school sound amazing. I've always dreamt of doing that." And I said, "Well, you should." And then, then we had this serious conversation of, are we ready to commit that if we go into circus school together, it would suck for either one of us to suddenly change our minds in that 2 years, because then to kind of start all over again in midway just makes no sense, and you can't progress so much. So we promised to commit for that 2-year period, and organize some time to be able to train together and make an audition piece, because my audition piece wasn't rope, so I needed to make a new one. And then I went to Denmark, where he was living at the time, and we started training, and we managed to be just training partners for 3 days. I don't know, what about you guys?
I'll let Sarah talk about our story, I guess.
Did you start with acro yogi partners or as a couple?
I would say simultaneous.
Simultaneous, yeah. The short version is I met Sarah through acro yoga, and we became a romantic and acro partnership pretty quickly.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think it was a bit longer than 3 days, but yeah, very quick.
Yeah, it doesn't matter. That story's for another time. What I wanted to know is, do you find it then advantageous to have your life partner or romantic partner as your acro partner?
It's definitely not the only way, but it would be really tricky otherwise. It's just, it becomes sometimes hard when you have to bring all your troubles and training to home. We try to avoid that, but it does transfer.
Or bring your troubles at home to training.
Yes, both ways.
How do you, because we know a lot of acro yoga partnerships. How do you leave the training troubles at training or the at home troubles at home?
We try to, in the training, we try to solve the issues we've had there before we go home. So if we have some issues in training, maybe we need to take a breather, maybe one walks out and like talks with another friend or just has a little walk and then goes back, but we try to solve our issues of training before we go home. And then the other way around, even if I or him, more often maybe me, I don't know, would be totally pissed off when we're going to a training, we are committed to still take full advantage of that training session. So maybe we just decide that we won't talk and we'll just do our skills and our drills, or maybe we just like try to work around it. But especially if it's a training session with the coach, we have like set kind of boundaries and rules, or if it's a class of acro somewhere that we want to get all we can out of it. So like, swallow it, and if you know you're not going to speak nice things, don't speak.
We should write this down. We should take this on board. So we got really far off track, but that was all really good. That's really good stuff for us. The day-to-day at Circus School, what's it looking like now that you're coming into your second year and you do get to focus on your specific skills? Like, what's your life going to look like now?
Looks very interesting, very intense, but love it. We're going to have 8 hours of partner acrobatics a week plus 2 hours of group acrobatics. So that's every week what our partner acro life looks like, plus our own training. So that's quite a nice load. And then we also have our other specialities. So we'll both be doing lots of handstands, which always help in acro yoga and any kind of acro you're doing. Do your handstands. And so it's looking pretty full on and intense, but it's nice to be just doing what you love.
If you could give people one tip for their handstands, what would it be?
Do them.
Maybe two things. Well, two things popped into my mind first. Jared, my partner, gave me little homework after our first little training session we had together, and then we had like a month that we didn't see each other. And he said, so that you don't take too many steps backwards in our training while we can't train together. You should do, which was like you have to do, a 1 minute handstand every day. Doesn't matter if you have your belly or your foot against the wall, or maybe you're in a parking lot and you use your car or whatever you have, or you use a person or whatever, but it takes only 1 minute of your day. And it actually does make a big difference. So either that, just do a minute every day, or find your cue to work with your pelvic tilt. That nice old hips forwards. That's what a lot of us hear a lot. It's like that you're still piked or your hip should go forward. So find your cue for that. Find your drills for that. Like, you don't understand the cue that you've been told. Like, find what works for you, whether it's squeeze your legs in or whatever it is. Just like ask for tips from people and find your cue. Don't just get frustrated there and settle that I just can't do it. There's always a cue that clicks for you.
Yeah, I think that's really good. For me, consistency is the key to handstands, and I can really see the difference when I'm training them versus not training them consistently. So yeah, you guys have a really busy life with training and like specific acro study, I guess you would call it.
Mm-hmm.
So do you guys do any other training modalities outside of your circus education now?
I would love to have time to climb, but I don't. We snowboard. So that's our...
Good snowboarding in Spain.
Actually, there is. Surprisingly, there is. Like an hour away from Madrid, there you could find some powder.
Wow.
Which is pretty cool. So yeah, that's our common love of an activity. So we try to do that as a breather here and then. Otherwise, I don't know, we just mainly do acro. At least we enjoy that.
Well, speaking of enjoying it, does it ever become a chore? And if it does, how do you keep disciplined and how do you keep motivated to turn up and give your best to every training session every day?
If it starts to feel like work or a burden or...
Yeah.
I've never felt that.
That's a good
Yeah,
sign.
that's really good. Then you're on the right path.
Yeah. I just try to keep the training so versatile and interesting. And also, it's like we're meeting new people all the time and traveling, and there's just so many other like side effects of doing acro that it doesn't get boring. If you would only train together in just that one partnership, I'm sure at some point it would become a bore. But luckily we do train with other people as well in travels.
And do you and Jared also play together? Or is it just training now?
I would like to play a little more. We do play with each other in creation-wise, but it's also our work because we do need to always be creating for a new performance. So that is kind of like you play, but you're working.
Yeah.
So I would sometimes like to spend more time actually playing with acro yoga and like creating new washing machines and creating new transitions. I really enjoy that. But unfortunately we don't do that so much at the moment together, but I also understand it's because we only will be in a circus school for 2 years of our lives and we have 1 year left and we want to progress as much as possible. So it is important now to do our drills and do our skills and play later.
Yeah, do the work and play later. So talking about creativity, what are some ideas and practices you can recommend to people that they can incorporate into their acro so that they may come up with a new washing machine or they may come up with a new flow or a new sequence?
Well, at first you just have to actually drill your basics and learn how to fall. Especially if you're working as a duo. If you haven't done all the basics enough, it's going to be really hard to be creative. So, yeah, for example, in Melbourne when I was there and doing acro, I was living with this awesome guy Ned and all his other like 6 roommates, but he probably knows like 75 washing machines by heart.
Wow.
So I would just do them all and just learn first the language, learn all the already invented transitions and basic moves. And then also in our workshops we like to use this like, well, what if you reverse it? What if you do it without hands? What if you press into it? What if you pop into it? What if you close your eyes? What if you do it in a mono? Like there's like these certain little cues that you have as a tool case that you can then use in your boring practice the things that already exist to make it more interesting. And then you kind of like, you learn the language, you learn the things that exist, then you learn the tool case that you can use to make it more interesting. And then you just basically start doing your own. But yes, in circus schools, actually, the first like half a year in many places, especially in Nike in Australia, first half year they just teach you to fall. And that is something that is maybe not done enough in acro yoga world. We need good spotters and spotting, and that's the most important thing. But when you're learning a skill, it would be really great also to actually go through and do all the possible exits, all the possible falls. So that way you also enhance creativity.
So if you're learning a new skill, before you try to nail it, or would you go through the motions and deliberately fail? Is that, not use the word fail, but deliberately fall out?
Yeah, actually I would. In most cases I would. We do a lot of Icarian stuff these days, and we do a lot of dynamic standing stuff. And a lot of moves come into my mind right now where I'm thinking like, yes, I would never do the actual skill before I've gone through in my body all the possible scenarios of what if.
Could you use an example of?
Yeah. For example, there's these swivels, which are like an Icarian thing where you sit in kind of like a straddle throne but without wrapping around. And then the base winds and pops you from like throne to reverse throne, and from there to back to throne. And you just like swivel around the feet. Before doing that pop, you kind of have to be okay to land and fall, or even not land and fall. So you would just go into straddle throne with bent legs without wrapping, and fall to every direction from there in a safe way. And then you go to reverse, so the end position, and you would fall to every direction from there and exit in a safe way. So you're like not exiting in a like most beautiful way, but you actually fall and then exit. So then you feel that we can do this pop because whatever happens, we're okay with it.
So yeah, the spotting, like you mentioned, is probably something that's neglected in a lot of acro communities, particularly like grassroots levels acro jams. So how would you encourage a strong spotting ethic within local communities?
In jams or in classes? Because in jams, that's a hard question. How would you go to a community and just go into a jam and like build a spotting community there? Probably by teaching super awesome, cool tricks with like really hands-on specific spotting, and then make people realize that they can do amazing things if they know how to spot them. Yeah. So that could be one that you can do either in a workshop or jam. Leading by example is always good. Just like go there and be the most awesome person who can spot people into things that they never believed they could do.
Yeah.
All right, we're coming to close to the end of the interview. We do have a couple more things I want to ask you. I want to ask you who you look for inspiration. You mentioned before a performance which really inspired you. I don't know if you remember what that performance was.
It was all genius, all idiots. And it was graduates from DOC, a circus school in Sweden. So in creative ways, that kind of circus really inspires me. So there's people who, yes, do amazing skills, but they also do all their live music on stage. They are totally crazy and quirky and like with just like full-bodied artists and not just acrobats. So that kind of performances, and for Australians, like there's things like Gravity and Other Myths here.
Yeah.
Which I really admire because they manage to do amazing circus on scene and they actually enjoy it. So I love seeing that. Just like casual enjoyment of what you're doing and still conveying meaning to the audience.
In the future, you mentioned you did rope and that you can play many different musical instruments. One day, are you going to combine all of these skills?
Hopefully. Yeah. If I will be lucky enough that I can actually do performance and teaching acro as my profession, and I don't totally get in debts and run out of money and have to go back to being a school teacher, then yes, I definitely will do that. Promise to the world. Give me in food and I will do that.
Well, without looking too far or getting too into the future, what is the trajectory you'd like to take post Circus School? Where do you hope that this will take you?
I hope to keep doing exactly what I'm doing right now, but next level of it. In teaching wise, I wish that I would be actually going to all these beautiful events that I've been going to already and lately. I wish the events grow. I wish the events that I'm organizing grow and more people get into them, and people keep appreciating partner acrobatics and acro yoga, and people and teachers get paid, and it's not considered just voluntary work. So that I could support myself with that, and performing. So hopefully we'll make a company or we would join a company. Either way.
Yeah.
Yeah. I also wish to have an event in my family land in north of Finland from 2020, which would be like Lapland Acro or Midsummer Night Acro event. Midsummer Night's Sun, which is you're gonna have 24 hours of daylight, never-ending acro. We have a beautiful piece of land there in Seaside, and my family's starting to be thumbs up for it. So I want to also start fully my own bigger acro event. So maybe that can be part of what will support me in the future and support the community.
Did you have any other events coming up that you wanted to tell us about? Yeah,
you mentioned doing what you're doing now and organising events. So if people want to catch you, where can they find you?
We have a website called whatmaybe.life. So you can find all me and Jared's events there. We'll be teaching a very short layover workshop in Perth in a week's time, so 27th of September, and then we will go back to Spain and we'll teach weekly classes there, and we'll probably be next year, hopefully, in French Acrobatics Convention and Israeli Acrobatics Convention, Helsinki Acro Yoga Week. Lots of different events. When we graduate, there'll hopefully be more and more. We don't have to turn them down anymore because we're not going to be studying anymore. So, but whatmaybe.life is the website to find an Acrobatics and Facebook and Instagram. Yeah.
Cool. All right. Acrobatics.
It's like acrobatics but with a
K. All right. This has been really nice. So thank you, Kat. Thanks for spending this time with us.
Thank you.
Hey Hey guys, thank you for joining us for another episode of the Acro Jam Podcast. If you would like to help out the Acro Jam Podcast, it'd be great if you could like and subscribe on iTunes, leave us a 5-star review, or you could even write a review. But if you don't want to do any of that, just thanks for listening. The fact that anyone wants to listen to this is more than enough for us. But if there's someone you think might enjoy this podcast, or if you think your local Acro group would benefit from it, make sure you share it with them. Tag us at the Acro Jam Podcast, and together we can help grow this podcast into something that can make a positive impact on the Acro community. If you want to keep in touch with the podcast, you can find us on Facebook at the Acro Jam Podcast. Instagram is the same name, and like we mentioned before, there's a new website. Make sure you visit acrojampodcast.com to make sure you stay up to date with everything we have going on and catch all the latest episodes. And finally, little personal plug. If you want to catch Sarah and I's Instagram and, give us some motivation to actually do something with it, come have a look at Acro Yoga Newcastle. Be our friend, subscribe, give us a heart, or do whatever you do on Instagram. Cool. See you for next episode, guys. Peace.